Okay, transformations. When you're transforming a shape, you are applying a rule to it which will move it. That move may mean that it turns, which would be a rotation. It may mean it changes size, becoming smaller or larger, which would be an enlargement. It may become a mirror image of itself, in which case it would be a reflection. It may turn around, in which case it would be a rotation, or you could get a combination of these. So the first one to look at would be a translation. If you're translating a shape, then you would be taking that shape and nothing would change apart from its position on the page. So it may move so far across and so far up and then become exactly the same shape. That would be a translation. A rotation would take your shape and maybe turn it upside down. That would be a rotation. An enlargement would take your shape and possibly make it larger, but it could make it smaller depending on what the scale factor would be. So that's translation, rotation, enlargement. The other thing that could happen to your shape, if I squeeze it in here, is a reflection. Now what a reflection would do is put a mirror line somewhere on your shape, which would then treat that as a mirror and reflect the pattern. So translation moves your shape according to an across and up rule, but apart from that it stays exactly the same. A rotation would give you a center of rotation, just like with rotational symmetry, which you would turn so many degrees one direction or another. Enlargement would change the size of it, and a reflection would, just like a mirror, flip it, reflect it in that mirror line. Okay, let's take a look then at what these questions actually look like. The language of them tends to be the thing that causes most confusion. Draw the image of the shape A. So here's shape A. After a translation of -3 units in the x direction, or the x direction on a coordinate axis is this direction, and 5 in the y direction. This is the y direction. So the x direction means I'm going to take every point on this shape and move it -3 this direction. So -3 is going that way 3 squares, and then 5 would be +5 up. So this corner here, I would be going across 3 in this direction, 1, 2, 3, and up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then every other point will be the same. So that one will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see that once you've got the position of one of the corners, you can go ahead and draw the rest of the shape. Onto your grid. Label the image B. So that's a translation. Okay, it's taking your shape and moving every point on the shape 3 units that way and 5 units that way, but the shape remains identical, but just a different position on the grid. To A, again we're talking about a translation, so we're going to move that shape according to a rule. This time it's 3 plus 3 units in the x direction and minus 5 in the y. So plus 3 in the x is going to take that point 3 that way, 1, 2, 3, and every other point 3 that way. So the shape ends up, sorry, got that wrong, 5 minus 5 in that direction. So it's 3, 1, 2, 3, and then down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that corner ends up there, and then this corner 3 down 5, and producing the shape there. Okay, so that's labeled B. Okay, so I went wrong first of all, so ignore that. Make sure you're happy and I haven't confused you there. Every corner is going to move 3 in the positive x direction, 1, 2, 3, and then 5 in the negative y direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Part B is a rotation. So we're going to turn this triangle. When you're turning, make sure you get tracing paper off the exams invigilator. We're going to rotate this shape through 90 degrees clockwise about the point -1, -2. So this is a bit like a rotational symmetry question. What we need to do is cover your grid with the tracing paper, copy the triangle that we are going to rotate, put a little arrow on it, and we need to spin this about the point 1, -2. So 1 is the x coordinate, so you're going to cross 1 and down to -2, which is there. So that's where you're going to pivot your tracing paper from. Okay, so we're going to hold the pen there to turn it around there, and we're going to turn it 90 degrees, which is quarter of a turn, clockwise, which is in this direction. So a quarter of a turn in this direction means that that arrow is going to be pointing right when we need to stop. So make sure everything is ready for this rotation. I've traced the triangle that we're turning. I've got my arrow drawn on, and I know where I'm pivoting from, 1, -2. So I'm going to hold my pen there, and I'm going to turn until that arrow is pointing right, and then I know I've gone through quarter of a turn. Stop. So that rotation takes me to there. Okay, go through that again, I think. Put your tracing paper on your paper, trace the shape. Draw yourself an arrow, find out where you're turning from. I'm turning from 1, -2. You need to then look at the instruction about how far you're turning it. You're turning it through 90 degrees, which is quarter of a turn, in the clockwise direction, which means I'm going to spin my paper in that way there. I'm going to keep going through quarter of a turn when my arrow is going to point right. That will give me that point there, which they're telling me to label D. Use a pencil. I'm using a freehand just to try and make the triangle a bit clearer for you on the video. So that's rotation, translation. Right, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, this time, again, what are we going to do? Draw the image of the triangle after a translation, so it's a moving question, 4 units in the x direction and -2 in the y. So each of these corners is going to go 4 that way 1, 2, 3, 4, and -2 down 2 that way. So that corner there ends up there. This corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and this corner down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So our shape ends up there. Label the image B, put a B in it. This one, rotating. Get your tracing paper. Cover the grid. Where are we rotating? Here's the shape that we have to rotate. There's my little arrow. Okay, this time the turn is about the point -1, -1. -1, -1 is there. So that's where I'm going to spin it. And as with the previous one, it's a quarter of a turn, 90 degrees clockwise, so I'm turning that way. So hold my pen there and turn until the arrow is pointing straight in that direction. Mark in where your triangle is, which is there, down to there, and back again. So there, and that's going to be image D.